we stand for certain things and we will defend. We will fight and we'll also defend.
So, to answer that question in very short, we have to start putting our faith in institutions which can actually weather the storm in a way that they become responsive to us. We can't have dysfunction. We can't have political parties that we hope will articulate our voice, articulate it selectively for one section. We can't have a parliament that doesn't actually focus on public issues but has become a forum for deflecting attention, pinning blame, appropriating a space or an issue only to thwart somebody politically. There has to be a larger approach. The courts need to be much more open and ready to dispense justice till we don't fix these little aberrations. Look, we must give credit to ourselves. Look at our neighborhood. We almost started at the same time, right? Barring one country. Look at where they are today. Sri Lanka is a client state.
Yeah.
Maldives is a client state. Pakistan is dysfunctional. Bangladesh at this moment in time looks towards, heading towards again a period of instability. You have Nepal, which is still sort of being pulled asunder by the weight of its own history, doesn't quite know where it wants to go. You have India, which is really the beacon of stability. So we must pat ourselves on our shoulders, but also look at where we need to improve. So the basic grandeur of democracy is where we need to focus. We've awarded ourselves a beautiful system where we vote, we have a say, but that say must amount to something. It should, the apparatus of the state needs to be, I believe, right now, re-looked at, re-kitted, re-outfitted for the next till 2047. That's where we need to be, 33 years.
We're, what, 77, 78. Yeah. India is now 78 years old. If India were a human being, you would say that 78 is like you've lived a full life. Yeah. You've come towards the end of your cycle as a human being. But in the life of a nation, 78 is still pretty young. I mean,
not even a blip.
Yeah, America is 250 years old. Britain's about 400 years old, right? So the point is that we are still in a young phase. We're still a young nation. Both historically, and we are a young nation because of the demographic dividend that we have. You know, my grandfather used to be a school teacher. He retired as a school principal, and he said, you know, the only thing that's a leveler in this country is education. I mean, that's ultimately what do we all want to do. We all want to give our kids a good education. Now, what they make out of it, whether they make something out of it, is on them. Yeah. But at least as parents, that's all we can do, right? We can give them access to good quality education. Because there is so much inbuilt, you know, systemic difficulty in this country, whether it is the NEET exam, whether it is competing for IIT JEE, I mean, our school system.
Getting into nursery.
Yeah, getting into nursery. I mean, you are really literally fighting against everyone. You're fighting the rat race, you're fighting the system. The only thing that can take you from here and put you up here, sort of making the playing field a little even, as Rahul was saying, is education. You get into a top school, it sort of lifts you up a bit. You get into a top college, it lifts you up a bit. And then, like I said, it's up to you to make your life. Which is why, for me, you know, the concerning pictures that we saw about, you know, all of these paper leaks and students losing faith in the exam system, and this whole thing that, oh, the system is rigged against us. People are getting, you know, full marks for the exam and so on. And mind you, even this women's protest is actually led by student doctors, right? So if our younger generation feel that despite a good education, despite going to the best colleges and schools, if they are not able to make a good life for themselves and for their next generation, then I think we have a problem.
What about you, Anand?
I think that there are 3-4 things where I feel that across the political spectrum, there should be a bipartisan consensus. You talked about education, Zaka. I think we are 140 crore people, so we've got 60 crore students. Yeah. Let's say estimate, okay, 60 crore youngsters.
So 70% of our population
is young, and we will again have another 20-30 crore. So we need to have an education system that will cater to these at least 15 to 20 crore out of these 30 crore properly. So we don't need one top school. We need 10 schools which are number 1. We need 20 schools which are number 2, which are 30 schools which are number 3. And they should be able to cater. So for that, we need to have a nation of teachers. We have to build an army of teachers who will teach the right way, who will educate the right way in all aspects. So that's one aspect of education. And there should be a bipartisan agreement on this.
Yeah.
There cannot be politically, I will push this and you will push that.
Correct.
Irrespective of who's in government, this is non-negotiable. The second part is this whole concept of nationhood will come in only when we as we bipartisan, we have a point where we say, you can go and bash anything and anybody. You have the freedom to do that. But it has to be under the tricolor. It cannot be to say, I will stand under the tricolor and talk about breaking it. Separatist narrative, secessionist narrative, and any Asmita, state, regional wise Asmita has to be under the tricolor, it cannot be above. This also has to be a bipartisan agreement. That's when we're going to have a concept of nationhood.
But you've just come back from Kashmir.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've always believed that the best antidote to any form of secessionist, separatist sort of sentiment is more democracy. I mean,
but the condition for democracy, Zaka, that patriotism and framework of the constitution has to be non-negotiable. So that means any politician who says, I'll bring back 370. 370 is no longer there in my constitution. So if he says, I'm going to do it, that means you're changing the constitution and you're talking separately. People who talk about Khalistan should not get a chance to fight elections. People who talk about a separate autonomous state should not talk anywhere in the country.
Two MPs who are
talking
about
see,
Khalistan.
that is where our polity, our
polity,
election commission is wrong, because the constitution, and I am subject to correction, says if you cannot do communal ranting, you cannot do secessionist ranting, you cannot do it. The election commission can be empowered to say any party that professes it, even quotes it, read between the lines and soft separatism peddles this, will be given a warning. So its candidate and its entity de-recognized. I just feel these two things are important.
Evolving institutions that can actually, as I said, whether they're educational institutions, scientific institutions, a strong, definitive, working, not dysfunctional, divided, and unfortunately reduced to a little gladiatorial, ground. Parliament, Sansad, right? Where does that word come from? Let's ask ourselves that question, okay? Courts, an executive that is truly responsive to the public, a federal structure that doesn't creak under, again, as you said, partisan politics. So I think if you invest in institutionalism, we've come this far, riding on the back of great institutions. I think we really need to relook at whether they are doing exactly as we imagined they would do. So if we can, that'd be great. Now, we mustn't forget that India, as a political concept, as a nation state, is very young. Most people have had political unity. One monarch that was ruling a realm, which became their nation in the modern sense. India never had that. We were many city-states, many kingdoms. So this is a new experiment, but it's a bold experiment. What can hold it together?
See, 70 years of the Hindavi Rajya between the Mughals and the Brits is a blip. We don't remember. So that's the same age as Bharat is right now today. So I think that the other part is, I think as a nation, our systems, our entire structure currently is tailored for a 40 crore population, not a 140 crore population. If we are 3 people and there's 1 slice of bread, we are going to fight. But if I have 10 slices of bread, we're not going to fight, we're going to share. I think that's where we as a nation have to, and I think it's the polity, administration, the leaders have to say, these are things which will be bipartisan. We're not going to do politics around this. We're not going to shift from this. This is our ideological pillar as a nation. Once that is decided, I think the rest will follow. Gents, sorry.
No,
please complete.
No, I think